trust the people that I come in contact with. I trust the gun lovers that I know that, hey, they're going to seek me out. You know why? They're going to seek me out, and they're going to want to get that training. Because if you have a good... But hopefully we're going to pass constitutional carry, and everyone will have a safe space. All right, so we're sitting here talking with Philip Turner. Philip, so you're telling us about your interaction with the Austin Police Department here in Austin, Texas.
I've been occasionally going out filming APD. They have been polite and cordial, and I always wondered why. And it never struck to me that there was a complaint that was launched back in November from an incident where James and Jesse were harassing me. These are two APD officers. They harassed me for a complete straight hour while I was filming a traffic stop. Now, this was not about officer safety at this point. This officer came to me, stood within 2 feet from me, and pulled out his flashlight and shined it in my camera. And his goal was to pretty much intimidate me into either leaving or provoking me to do something to start a physical encounter.
Now, how did you come across the one officer that had a vehicle pulled over?
Typically, this was like I believe it was a weekend, and typically I always go down to 6th Street to do some filming. And I have this tradition or routine that I would go to 6th Street, and if I see traffic stops along the way, I would get out and film them. So I was taking from 183 to Runberg, and then 35 straight to 6th Street. And I just happened to be heading to Runberg and saw that traffic stop.
Okay, so you came across this officer with a person pulled over, and so you started filming, and then the second officer pulled up and actually started flashing his flashlight right in your camera so you couldn't see. And so there were some words going back and forth, why are you doing this? And the officer was asking you, well, who are you? And you really don't have to tell him because you're not doing anything. You're standing really a great distance away, so you're not interfering with what they're doing. And then it kind of changed a little bit because you were there for a while, and then they started like kind of following you and wouldn't let you go to your vehicle.
That's right. And at that point, the officer made it clear that he didn't care about department policy. He didn't care, that I had the right to film police officers.
And you actually were telling him the policy that he needed to take a look at it and actually read it and be familiar with. What was that policy number you were yelling out?
302, and that was interacting with the community.
Okay. And so it got to a point where you're standing on the sidewalk and you're trying to go back to your vehicle, and then they refused to let you go to your vehicle. They said you couldn't you couldn't step on the grass or anything, and they just would block you from getting to your vehicle to leave. They tell you to leave, but refuse to allow you to leave to get to your vehicle.
Right, and that was just like a bully tactic right there. They wanted to wait until the tow truck got there to remove the car from the scene, and then I would be allowed to get in my car. But this guy was already arrested and already hauled off to jail.
And they were saying, you need to leave. Well, okay, I'm trying to leave. I'm trying to go to my vehicle. No, you can't go to your vehicle, but you need to leave. Well, in order for me to leave, I need to get to my vehicle. Well, don't step and don't touch me, by the way.
Right. and there's no way I could walk. I literally tried to walk to the left, to the right. I did a whole 360 around the scene, and they would not allow me to get to my car. And it just got to the point to where I had to step back a good distance away because it got to the point to where these officers were grabbing me and shoving me. And I was like, look, dude, leave me alone. Get your hands off me. I felt nervous. I feared for my life at that point because I felt like there was no one else out there with me that night.
Now that happened. When did that happen? That was like 2 years ago.
That was actually no, a couple of months ago. 7 months ago. It was actually in November.
Okay, so November of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because I noticed that for the last 3-4 months, APD's been really nice and polite. I've kind of noticed. I noticed the atmosphere has actually changed. When I see an officer on the road there, out there on the road, I say hi. They're very nice. They're polite. The atmosphere's really changed, and I can't figure out why.
It's because Art Arcevedo isn't here anymore.
I don't know. Honestly, I can't figure out why, but it is changed, though.
Yeah, I would agree, because I'm downtown all the time, and in the past I've seen some of the most unfriendly police officers I've ever seen, but lately you're right.
Yeah,
now
they're
that
very-
you mention it.
Very nice, very polite, cordial. I mean, it's a good relationship. So I'm glad that you do what you do, because those two officers were what? They were suspended.
They were suspended. James was suspended 20 days without pay, and Jesse was suspended 10 days without pay. But the funny thing about James is he was also not only was he suspended 20 days without pay, he was also put on a year probation. So if he gets another similar complaint that's sustained to this incident here, he's going to be suspended indefinitely without the chance to appeal.
And then now here's the problem with that, okay? Because there's a difference between suspending someone and terminating them. Because if you terminate them, they lose their TCO. If you suspend them, they can go to another department, and that is where you bring into the fray of gypsy cop. You've heard that term,
Right.
Gypsy cop, where you can go from department to department. So when they start playing with those little words, I'm sorry, I'm just a stickler for the law. I'm a stickler for rules and stuff like that. And when you suspend an officer, then that they can actually quit, leave, and go to another department, get another job, and start off over fresh, and just like nothing else happened. And so that's a problem with that. So that's something that needs to be addressed with the legislature. If there's we have a problem officer and they're going from department to department, we actually need to do something. Now, has that case going to court? Did you file anything in civil court?
Well, the funny thing about that was I had a Fort Worth case go to the Fifth Circuit, which set a precedent to allow filming of police, and it's actually an established First Amendment right. And that was ruled on February 16 of 2017. So that covers the states of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And what that does is it's an established right to film police officers. Now, if a police officer interferes with your right to film, they'll automatically lose qualified immunity, no questions asked. Now, that incident there happened before the ruling. So what this ruling does, it pretty much null and voids any previous incident before February 16th, saying it wasn't a clearly established right then, but now we're saying it is now.
So going
forward, it's a violation of the First Amendment right, and it's a clearly established right, and that police officer will lose qualified immunity.
Tell us about what happened in Fort Worth that brought this case to that circuit.
I was actually out in Fort Worth and doing a little bit of filming. This was like near Nashville Road. There was a police department there. It was actually built like a castle among the buildings and neighborhoods and houses in that area. The area was run down, a lot of vacant businesses, homes, buildings were torn down, sidewalks are just messed up, trash everywhere. And then you see this police station with these nice new vehicles, and I was just sitting there thinking, like, how come this money couldn't go in to the community, making it better? And I decided to get that on film. Was filming a arrest at the high school that was actually not like 2 blocks away from the police station. Walked back to the police station and started taking a couple of shots on the opposite side of the sidewalk. Now, as I was walking on the sidewalk, I was approached by 2 officers who confronted me about filming, wanted me to ID, which I refused, and that prompted them to grabbing me, handcuffing me, and throwing me back into the police car, hotboxing me.
Now, I'm going to ask you about hotboxing in a second here, because there's a reason I asked you about there's a bunch of reasons I asked you to explain the story about Fort Worth, and I'll lead everybody into that. So why did they feel they had to, well, let me ask you this. Why do you think that you have to ID yourself?
Why do they think that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you have to ID yourself?
You do not.
Why not?
Because Texas Penal Code 3802 says you do not have to ID yourself unless you're lawfully arrested. It only becomes a crime, or it only becomes an offense, if you give a fictitious name, resident, or date of birth to a police officer who has detained you. And I don't see how peace officers can get that mixed up.
And you weren't detained yet?
I was detained.
You weren't detained at that time?
I wasn't detained, but when he said I was detained, I had the option to either give him my information
Or not.
Or not. But if I do, I just can't lie about it, or it becomes an offense.
Okay. And now they put you inside, they handcuff you, put you in the vehicle.
Right.
And hotboxing, what's that?
They had the windows rolled up, the AC was not running, and this was during the summertime.
Now, the reason I brought that up, because a state representative, well, the reason I asked you that, to explain that, because a state rep filed a bill this session, and his name is, oh man, it escapes me right now. It'll come to me. He actually filed a bill that said that if you forget, you're a dog lover. You're a dog lover.
Oh yeah,
I
this
read
bill.
that same bill earlier today, and I knew you were going, yeah.
You're a dog lover, and you forget and you leave your dog in the vehicle for 5 minutes or more, and they cannot find you. They can break your window and save the dog, which is great.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, but then they're also going to charge you with a Class A misdemeanor.
Yeah. Put a human in the back of a
Representative Villalba. I knew it would come to me. Yes, he filed this bill, Villalba, State Representative Villalba out of North Texas, filed this bill that says, you know, if you're a dog lover, because that's who carries their dog in their vehicle, someone who loves their animal. For some reason, you forget, something happens, you go somewhere, whatever, and something takes a little longer, and you left that dog in the vehicle. It doesn't say what the temperature is. It doesn't say if it's, 75 degrees, 65 degrees. It doesn't say if it's 90 degrees. It doesn't say anything. It just says you leave that dog in the vehicle over 5 minutes, and they have to break the window, take the dog out of the vehicle. They can't find you. They're going to charge you with a Class A misdemeanor. And I thought that was very serious. So, and I testified against this bill because I said the point that I brought up was if something happens, if I do something today in this building, you haul me out of here, put me in handcuffs, you arrest me, you put me in the back of a vehicle, and you roll that window up, don't turn the AC on, are we going to charge that police officer with a Class A misdemeanor? And no one can answer that question because of course not. You're not going to. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to law enforcement. We got to hold law enforcement officers to the exact same standard as civilians. I'm not even asking them to hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah.
I'm not saying hold them to a higher standard. I'm saying hold them to the same standard. As when it comes to Chapter 9 of the Texas Penal Code, when it comes to use of force and deadly force, civilians have to follow the same law as law enforcement officers. Everyone's got to follow that same Chapter 9 when it comes to use of force and deadly force in all of our laws. So, that's what I'm talking about. We need to hold them to the same standard as a regular civilian. If they do something wrong, they need to be prosecuted for that. And that is what's not happening. So that's why, I wanted you to explain that a little bit. Okay, so that case ended up going to you said Fifth Circuit?
Fifth Circuit of Appeals.
Okay. And you won that case.
I did.
Any,
I was actually pretty excited. My lawyer delivered the news to me while I was
see, he is
about to go to class.
He's so calm. He's so quiet. That is a really big deal. That went to the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit. That means that law has been changed for this area. That means that, someone thought that you couldn't do what you were doing, and the Fifth Circuit say, yes, he does have a right to do that, and that stands whole true to what states?
Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
That is a really big deal. This guy will do, Philip Turner is doing more for your rights than any legislature at the Capitol. I'm telling you right now, when it comes to protecting you as an individual being pulled over on the side of the road.